Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle-market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. Novant Health is a not-for-profit group of hospitals and medical clinics caring for surrounding communities. Their nurses, physicians, and staff are nationally recognized for their remarkable devotion to patient care. And by Sonoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Well, we may be very well able to declare now that our business and commercial activity is at least improving. For 3 years now, we have seen starting and stopping in dynamics indicating that surely the lumpiness of this economy is here to stay. But for a few months now, the trends in real estate and jobs, as an example, are indeed finally improving. This is the Carolinas' most widely watched source for regional business and public policy. I'm Chris William, and happy holidays. Welcome again. Joining us later on this dialogue, Durham-based bank chief Kim Saunders.
Major funding also by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation in Charlotte, enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina, who's responsible for rising healthcare costs. Join Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded December 2nd, 2011. On this week's program, Dr. Karen Kadrowski of Winthrop University, Harvey Schmidt of the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, and special guest Kim Saunders, President and CEO of Mechanics and Farmers Bancorp. Now, Chris William.
Happy holidays and welcome. Harvey, good to have you back. It's been too long, by the way.
It has been, Chris. Yeah. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Karen, nice to have you back.
Thank you.
I was on vacation when you were here last time, and I remember it being a politically hot season, so we wanted to make sure we got you back in the mix. And for better or for worse for you, you're back here, so thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
And let's start with politics. Harvey, it would seem like, and certainly in the Triangle, you can't go anywhere without being reminded that transportation and infrastructure is very important, not just to economic development, but to the way of life. And Karen, in the MSA that you're in, Charlotte, Rock Hill, but also across the state of South Carolina, same issue. On a political, and it is political, an issue of transportation, which would seem like everyone should be looking in the same direction on. Why can't we even find middle ground on something like that, Harvey? What is it about us right now that can't find middle ground on anything?
Well, anytime you have scarce resources, and we have a lot scarcer resources these days, the competition increases. And so I think it's very easy in a situation in which you've got a natural conflict over values and interests for the political process to leverage that to its own objectives. And while everybody, I think, is generally in favor of transportation, there's a lot of people who think, I don't want to spend any more money on anything than I absolutely have to, and there are folks who represent that position who are going to try and leverage that concern to their interest. And so I think today, in a day of scarce resources, it's hard to find consensus on pretty much of anything.
Yeah, Karen, is that it? Is it because it's gotten so tight? Or is there something else about the middle ground? When we talk about a gas tax or whatever the solution might be for transportation, we talk about schools, we talk about those things that impact all of us. Why can't we seem to find a consensus?
Well, I think actually Harvey is right, and that there is there's a battle going on between those that want to cut spending and reduce spending and those that want to see taxes increased. And irrespective of what you call it, a sales tax, a user fee, or any other pseudonym, it comes down to a tax. And there are a lot of elected officials who have taken no tax pledges that they take very seriously. So in South Carolina, I can tell you that South Carolina likes to boast that it has one of the lowest gas taxes in the country. I spent less than $3 a gallon the last time I filled my tank. But at the same time, we also see that our roads are deteriorating. You know, there is infrastructure that needs repair that is getting neglected. And so what we're starting to see in South Carolina especially is that effort to find middle ground by talking about comprehensive tax reform, not focusing on a cigarette tax or an income tax or a property tax, but to look at taxes holistically as a way of improving the state's financial situation.
Okay, not to get too much in the weeds of the politics around the particular gas tax, whether it's good or not. Let's come back to this idea of leadership. Is it and you talked about that some of the legislators in South Carolina have taken a pledge and won't go back on that pledge.
Yes.
Are the Grover Norquist pledges of the world, are they good or are they bad? When they take a pledge and won't budge off that pledge?
I think that the problem is that compromise has become a bad word, irrespective of whether it's on the Grover Norquist side or if it's on the left side. And what we lose when people take those kinds of hard and fast no new taxes pledges, or when they take hard and fast pledges that, you know, there won't be any tax increases on middle income Americans, or that there won't be any benefit cuts or, you know, spending cuts in social programs, is that eliminates the opportunity to find that common ground. Once upon a time, when, in Washington especially, when compromise was not a dirty word, when compromise was not equated with going and running away from principles, we found that people would move together. You know, I will agree to moving a bit on my position if you will agree to moving a bit on your position. So you will agree to a modest tax increase even though you don't like it, if I will agree to some modest spending cuts that I don't like, and coming together in that way. And when you have people whose idea of compromise is, this is my position, you come and meet me where I am, then you're not going to get anywhere. Because when two people play that game, there's nobody moving.
Harvey, quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but is compromise, is that a position of weakness now?
Well, I think it's a big challenge. It's hard to get people in that space because politics has become so shorthanded. That is, they've got to come up with a quick soundbite because trying to capture the attention of the public. I think part of the problem is that the public's attention to the details surrounding some of these issues isn't deep enough. And for the various parties to reach their constituents, they shorthand into sort of either-or propositions. And I think that's part of the challenge that we as a society have to work our way through, is how do we get ourselves more engaged? I mean, for me, I take a look at a lot of different public policy issues at a given time, and with the proliferation of media opportunities, it's hard to get people to focus on any one particular issue for any particular point in time. So we wind up with this whole shorthand communication process, which actually flourishes on the extreme as opposed to the nuance in the middle.
That's interesting. So is this fractional way that we communicate with each other, and I never planned on going down this road, Harvey, but has this fractional way, is this how it's going to be going forward? And what kind of society does that mean we're going to have?
I actually think it is the way that we're going forward. That and what we find at the national level, but also at the state level, and you're seeing it in presidential campaigns, are sort of soundbite politics. You know, the phrases that are used, whether it's, you know, job creators instead of the phrase business, or whether it's, you know, the phrase privatizing Medicare is strengthening Medicare, for example. These have been very well tested against focus groups to find that they resonate very well, even if people are not exactly sure what they mean. And to raise off of, or to jump off of Harvey's point about how people aren't focusing, what people do in fact focus on is what in fact they think sounds good. And what they like are low taxes and high levels of service. And when you look especially at the federal level, where unlike many states which are bound by balanced budget requirements legally, the federal government is not. What you find are pretty generous social services and fairly low taxes comparatively. And the problem is that the numbers don't add up. That math just doesn't work.
You know, Harvey, I want to ask you a question here, so I'm going to. What does that say about us when we're willing to wait in line for a 3 a.m. sale on Black Friday, but voter turnout nationally, at least in the 2010 elections, was 37%?
Well, there is an apathy that exists, and I think it's, I want to give the...
Is it dangerous?
Well, it is dangerous, but I think I got to give the voting public some cover here, because they just get overwhelmed with information. And what tends to attract their attention is the conflict, because that generates a little bit of excitement, and so people sort of zoom into that. But the process of sort of thoughtful debate and discussion and trying to understand everybody else's position, by the time you get about to the second page of that conversation, something else has come blaring in at you from the other side, and off you go into that direction. And I do think there's a challenge to society. It's a lot different today than it was when I started in this business 40 years ago, but the whole world's changed, and maybe the next generation will be able to multitask better on some of these voter issues that require a more nuanced attention. But at this point in time, it's very easy to stay with the simple and not get into the deep.
In about a minute, Karen, because we're going to run out of time here, you know, we talk about national politics, and how can we ignore the fact that South Carolina's primary, presidential primary, GOP primary rather, in South Carolina in February is going on now. Who's
January.
the late in January? I'm sorry, you know, they keep getting moved up.
Yes,
Pretty soon
do.
they'll be. It was already last week. Who has the lead? How much is that going to change?
Well, this week it's Newt Gingrich, and I think that actually the Republican field remains shockingly volatile. It really seems like they're trying on a new, you know, that the Republican activists are trying on a different dress every day and trying to figure out which one they like. And it's been very interesting to watch someone come out of nowhere and generate enormous publicity and excitement, and then 2 weeks later be a has-been. We had Michelle Bachmann on campus in July to a standing room only overflow crowd in excess of 500 people. Today she was in Rock Hill at Books A Million. And that's just one case in point. So I expect that Newt Gingrich is the flavor of the week. I'm not quite sure who the next flavor of the week is. And so that really leads me to look at where is the consistency. And the consistency in the public opinion polls is that Mitt Romney is second.
Is there
and
any...
I think that will probably mean that he is going to have carrying power beyond South Carolina and into the convention.
And excuse me for interrupting you. Is the best of the best in the Republican field, can they beat Obama?
Yes. The two principal predictors in any given year of the outcome of a presidential election are the president's popularity rating, the incumbent president's popularity rating, and the state of the economy. Obama's popularity rating now is around 43%, which is lower than where it needs to be this close to the election. And the economy, as you just noted, is going through fits and starts. And Gallup has been doing some polling of Obama versus generic Republican candidate, and it's really neck and neck. Mm-hmm. But unless the economy improves, which will also bring up Obama's approval rating, he has every reason to be worried about his election.
Okay, I'm going to give you a pass on that one, Harvey, by the way. Our guest will be out here in just a second. Next week on this program is, it's got to be one of our, at least it's one of my personal favorites. You get four economists in a room together. Not only will they not agree, but it's actually more entertaining than it is anything else, and we're going to do that again next week on this program. We have them, we've had them, and we're going to have them again. Doctors John Connaughton from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, Dr. Harry Davis from Appalachian State University, Dr. Frank Hefner from the College of Charleston, and Dr. Scott Beyer from Clemson University. Bank Transfer Day, remember that? Well, it's not so far along or ago. It's another sign of the rise of consumer activism, surely, and the outrage against the system. The question is Bank Transfer Day and things like that more than just words? Are there measurable and meaningful results to that kind of rhetoric? Joining us now is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Durham-based Mechanic and Farmers Bank, Kim Saunders. Kim, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, what do you think about Bank Transfer Day? Was that a boon for your bank, or did it make sense to you? How does it look by the numbers, Kim, and what are your thoughts about this?
Well, we certainly did pick up a few new accounts. As soon as the large banks raised the fees, we saw new traffic into our branches. So for us, Bank Transfer Day and the concept of that was very exciting, just to bring into vogue really attention to community banks, the important role that we serve in terms of linking with the community and helping to provide economic resources in the community. Certainly from what I've read, the credit unions benefited greatly in the markets that we served. And so overall, we think it was a good initiative, and we hope it will be sustainable and continue.
Well, and that's a question. Can it be sustainable? Is it a fad, or do you see this as being a trend for people that really are disgusted with what they see as bad behavior at big banks?
Well, I think when we look at Occupy Wall Street and the fact that that still has some energy going on really around the country, I think it means that it was not just a fad. I think that we are at the precipice of looking at how we do business, where we put our dollars, and wanting those dollars to have some benefit. And certainly when you invest in a community bank like Mechanics and Farmers Bank that's been here 100 years, still on the same street, for example, in Durham, North Carolina, where we're headquartered, you can see that we are investing in the community. That's important to us, always has been and always will be.
Harvey, question?
Kim, I know the banking business has been very difficult of late, and as a result, the government's gotten a lot more active and involved in your business than they have been in the past. How are you dealing with rules and regulations, and what kinds of impacts are you seeing that have on your ability to get out and really get dollars on the street to help the economy going?
Well, certainly we're having to make a huge investment in compliance. The Dodd-Frank Act, we really went out and hired additional resources just to make sure from the compliance front that we have all of our ducks in a row and are covering all of the bases. Now, with Dodd-Frank, the emphasis, of course, was on the large banks, those banks that are 10 billion and greater. And so the implications, though, of changes in Reg CC, Reg Q, I mean, all of those things are things that we're going to have to study. We've already invested close to $90,000 just within the last 12 months in compliance resources that we did not invest last year. Just because, again, the regulatory landscape is continually changing, and you have to stay abreast of everything that's required.
Karen?
I am very interested in how the impact of the recession has reverberated through your institution and how you've seen it play out with your customers. Can you tell us some more about that?
Well, very few of the customers, I would say, have gone unscathed. We have about 75% of our portfolio that has continued to perform very well, but about 25% have really struggled. And so what we've had to do is to, again, invest in additional resources to be able to establish a special loan solutions team. And that team is actually rolling up their sleeves and working with each individual borrower to make sure that we structure and restructure loans in a way that they can repay them.
Are these personal loans, or are they home mortgages?
We actually are predominantly a commercial lender, and we have special expertise in the faith-based community. And certainly parishioners and church members have been impacted because of job losses across our footprint. And so we've had to roll up our sleeves and work with each of those individual commercial customers predominantly to recast their notes and to ensure that they're able to repay us. This, as we all know, was a very deep recession. I think they're tagging it the Great Recession because it was so deep. And so I don't know any institution that hasn't been impacted, or really any customer that hasn't been impacted in some way. If they went into this downturn with excess reserves and capital, they have been able to sustain their business model much more effectively than some others.
You know, and let me follow up on that, and also back to something that Harvey said, Kim. I mean, here you have Dodd-Frank, and as you said, much larger banks, and that was the impetus of that act. And let me throw this out, and it might not be a very formal term, but you got Fed doublespeak. You got the Federal Reserve telling you, we need you to shore up your balance. Oh, yeah, we need you to make loans, and we need you to not charge $5 to use debit cards. And I'm a bit tongue-in-cheek on what Bank of America found out not long ago. So how do you, when it's, you know, you're talking about spending $90,000 on compliance that you're not going to be able to get that back easily, how do you feel you're being squeezed?
That's correct.
How do you make sure that you don't change your risk profile and you're still profitable? I mean, really, what's the magic that goes through you and your operating committee and your board? What do you all talk about?
Well, I think, you know, the first thing we have to do is give a tribute to our customers. Our customers are very loyal, and I think that's because they recognize the value that we add in the communities that we serve. And for that reason, it's just like any other astute shopper. When you're shopping, you're looking for where can I get the most bang for my buck. But also with banking, our business model is one of what I call compassionate banking. And I think that that adds a lot of value in this economic cycle where people are being stretched. They need somebody who is actually willing to sit down and listen, not simply look at their FICO score and make a decision, but will take the time to customize financial solutions based upon their circumstances. And so because of that, when you look at our net interest margin, we have done very well. And again, it's thanks to our customers who don't necessarily require us to pay top of the market because they recognize the value that we bring to the relationship. And for us, it's really about relationship. And we have relationships, we're a century old, and we have relationships that go back generations that we've been serving customers, families, and businesses that long.
All right.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed in this cycle is that because of the tight credit situation, you have people really doing a lot of shopping, and so what's that consumer or that commercial customer looking like today? Have you been able to turn that dynamic to your benefit as folks look for other opportunities, especially as a minority-owned bank?
Well, I would say yes. We have gotten a lot more interest from the community in Mechanics and Farmers Bank. We've actually been able to grow through this cycle and to pick up additional customers. Now, the loan side is still very sluggish. I think most businesses are kind of sitting back and waiting for the economy to sustain some type of turnaround before you'll see a lot of expansion. So we've had a runoff in terms of our loans, and we've had to really become a lot more actively engaged in the marketing of the bank in order to try to secure additional business. And I think that that's going to continue so long as the economy is sluggish and just kind of slowly moving along.
Well, on the subject of loans, and Karen, we only got a couple minutes, and I want to make sure we bring this up because it's quite an outstanding recognition. Mechanic and Farmers is one of only 3 banks nationally that's been recognized as being outstanding according to the Community Reinvestment Act. I think that's pretty amazing, and we don't have you on the program just to shower accolades on you, but here's a program that reinvests back into community and especially back into neighborhoods that really need it. So I guess the question here is, Kim, it's a wonderful thing, congratulations. How do you do that and still be profitable? Because those loans aren't always the most profitable kind of loans.
Well, you know, I think that that is always the perception that, you know, as you serve unique markets, that there is a higher risk associated with that. And I would say when you look really at, again, I mentioned, for example, our niche and churches, our losses in that particular portfolio are nominal. So I think there's a misperception about the risk associated with lending into unique communities. What you do have is you have to invest more time, and that is a higher cost model.
Right.
But there is a benefit associated with that because the development of jobs in the community, affordable housing, economic turnaround are really going to be determined by investments in banks like Mechanics and Farmers Bank.
That's going to have to be the last word. I wish we had more time because you'll have to come back and talk about that. I wish we had more time. Kim, thank you for being on the program. Happy holidays.
For having me.
Good to see you. Karen, good to see you again. Thank you.
pleasure.
And Harvey, always appreciate the investment. Thank you. Till next week. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation in Charlotte, enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina, who's responsible for rising healthcare costs. Join Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle-market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. Novant Health is a not-for-profit group of hospitals and medical clinics caring for surrounding communities. Their nurses, physicians, and staff are nationally recognized for their remarkable devotion to patient care. And by Sonoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.com.